Hi, and welcome to my very first live on YouTube. Today we're going to be doing a reading of Alexander Graham Bell's Memoir Upon a Formation of um, a Deaf Variety of the Human Race. I don't even know how to say this title. It's so long and ridiculous to me. Um, there is about a minute delay on the live stream, so if you do end up in the live chat, I don't know if anyone will be able to come today, but just know there is a minute delay. Um, and so yeah, and you know what? I realized I wanted to go live here. I am going to. I was going to go live on TikTok as well. I am going to roll an intro, so let me know either in the replay or in the comments in the live chat if the sound doesn't work whenever I play things, because this is my first time doing all of that. Hi, my name is Lexi, also known as and doing business as Deaf Child. In 2022, my company was listed as number 14 Best Louisiana Events Companies and Startups. I have been doing business as Deaf Child since 2013. I have my Bachelor of Science in Music Industry Studies and Business Administration, and deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. And I've got about 50 certifications in marketing and sales that you can find at noladeafchild.com. So yeah, so moving on, we're just gonna get right up on into this freaking thing. I'm gonna start reading the Memoir Upon the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race, and I have bad vision, so I'm probably going to need to zoom in here. Let's see. So yeah, um, Alexander Graham Bell wrote a book, and it is all about ending deaf people, essentially. It's about eliminating the deaf race. He called it Upon the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race. And it was presented to the National Academy of Sciences at New Haven. Um, and the whole freaking thing here is that he was basically like in 1880 at the Milan Conference. He had just successfully spoke for 3 days straight while deaf people only had 3 hours. And he successfully got sign language banned permanently across the world in the Milan Conference of 1880. Well, a few years later, he publishes his memoir upon the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. So let's get into it. Um, First, we're going to start with the introductory remarks. So, introductory remarks. The influence of selection in modifying our breeds of domestic animals is most marked, and it is reasonable to suppose that if we could apply selection to the human race, we could also produce modifications or varieties of men. This isn't creepy at all. But how can we ascertain the susceptibility of the human race to variation produced by selection? We cannot dictate to men and women whom they shall marry, and natural selection no longer influences mankind to any great extent. We can see around us everywhere evidence of the transmission by heredity of characteristics, both desirable and undesirable. But at first sight, no general selective influence appears to be at work to bring about the union in marriage of persons possessing the same congenital peculiarities. I don't think I'm saying that word right. On the contrary, sexual attraction often appears to operate after the manner of magnetical attraction. Unlike poles attract, like poles repel. Oh dear God. Strong, vigorous, and robust men naturally feel a tenderness for weak, delicate, and fragile women. Oh, really? And are generally repelled by physical strength and masculine traits in one of the opposite sex. I think I should be reading faster, but it is hard for me to see what the fuck this shit is saying. Even in such characteristics as the color of the hair and eyes, it often appears that unlikes attract. Certain diseases are known to be liable to transmission by heredity, but we do not find epileptics marrying epileptics, or, you don't know that, or consumptives knowingly marrying consumptives. I don't even know what the fuck that means. Even though persons afflicted with the same hereditary disease were to intermarry for a number of successive generations, it is doubtful whether any permanent variety of the race could be formed in this way, for the increased tendency to disease inherited by the offspring would probably cause a greater tendency to premature death and ultimately occasion the extinction of the variety. The fuck does that mean? I don't even think Alexander Graham Bell knows what he's talking about. Um, on the other hand, it is reasonable to suppose that the continuous intermarriage of persons possessing congenital defects not associated with diminished vitality or vigor of constitution would result after a number of generations in the production of a vigorous but defective variety of the race. What? For instance, the absence of coloring matter from the skin and hair is a defect occasionally found among human beings, and we may learn from the success of attempts to propagate albinism among animals that we would probably produce a pink-eyed, white-haired variety of the human race by causing albinos to marry one another. But this is only speculation. First of all, I have no idea if I'm saying the word albino correctly or not, so if I am wrong, someone fix me and I'm sorry. And secondly, that sounds awful up. Um, we cannot control the marriages of men as we can the breeding of animals, and at first sight there seems to be no way of ascertaining how far human beings are susceptible of variation by selection. Well, considering this is written 1883. I'm pretty sure AGB was alive during slavery. Um, Not that I think that history was right, but what about that history? Okay. Um, I was talking about the captions didn't pick up that I was talking about AGB. He was probably alive during slavery. Um, and I really think that like that time period and how white people were and what we got away with, like I really, really, really think that influences this. Okay, so then he says, but such a conclusion, however, would be incorrect, and I desire to direct attention to the fact that in this country, deaf mutes marry deaf mutes. Okay, so I will be, in terms of just reading what he says, saying the words deaf mutes. Deaf people, we don't like to use that. Um, and then deaf dumb is also extremely derogatory and offensive in the deaf community. That would be considered a slur. And I will be using that term in regards to reading what AGB said, but yeah, very much against that also. Okay. Um, An examination of the records of some of our institutions for the deaf and deaf-dumb reveals the fact that such marriages are not the exception but the rule. For the last 50 years, there has been some selective influence at work, which has caused, and is still causing, the continuous selection of the deaf by the deaf in marriage. If the laws of heredity that are known to hold in the case of animals also apply to man, the intermarriage of congenital deaf mutes through a number of successive generations should result in the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. On the other hand, it can be shown that congenitally deaf persons marry one another without any greater liability to the production of deaf offspring than is to be found among the people at large, then it would be evident that we cannot safely apply to man the deductions that have been drawn from experiments upon animals. There are good grounds for the belief that a thorough investigation of the marriages of the deaf and the influence of these marriages upon the offspring will afford a solution of the problem. To what extent is the human race susceptible of variation by selection? Although the statistics I have been able to collect are very incomplete, I have ventured to bring the subject to the attention of the Academy in the hope that the publication of the results so far obtained may lead to the completion of the statistics. So he's saying he's been trying to figure out how to genetically modify humans through breeding us, and he wants more stats to do that. So this is what this whole paper is about. Like, what? And hearing people, they looked at this dude, they were like, you know what, you are so smart. And what? Well, when I say hearing people too, I'm bitching mostly about white hearing people. We should put that out there. Um, so yeah. And that's the introduction of this whole fucking thing. And we like that's how it starts. So moving on into chapter 1, it's called Upon the Materials for the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race at Present Existing in America. The first difficulty encountered in the inquiry that the published reports of our institutions for the deaf and dumb contain very little information bearing upon the subject. So that's where I was saying, like, the deaf and dumb, we're not cool with that. I'm using that because AGB said it, and I'm reading what he said, but we don't like that. If you call a deaf person deaf and dumb, and they go off on you, I warned you. Okay, but judging from the questions that are asked of the parents or guardians of the pupils, there must be among the unpublished records of our institutions an immense collection of valuable facts relating to heredity at present inaccessible to the public. Many of the reports of the institutions contain little more of interest in this connection than a catalogue of the pupils. The mere lists of names, however, become of value by directing attention to the fact that among the pupils who have been admitted to many of our institutions, numerous groups of deaf mutes are to be found who have the same surname. No one would be surprised by the moderate recurrence of such common names as Smith or Brown or Johnson, as the recurrences might be accidental and have no other significance than to indicate the prevalence of these names in the community at large. But can it be accidental that there should have been admitted into one institution 11 deaf mutes of the name of Lovejoy, 7 of the name of Derby, and 6 of the name of Mayhew? What interpretation shall be placed upon the fact that groups of deaf mutes are to be found having such names as Blizzard, Fahey, Hewitt, Clausen, Brasher, Koffer, Gortschalk. I don't think I'm saying these right. Such names are by no means common in the community at large, and the inference is irresistible that in many cases the recurrences indicate blood relationship among the pupils. An examination of a number of institution reports shown I'm reading this wrong, I apologize. An examination of a number of institution reports shows that these recurrences are altogether too numerous to be entirely accidental, and we are forced to conclude that deafness runs in certain families, and that these families are very numerous, and that they are found to be in all parts of the United States. The following list of recurring surnames, taken from the 1877 report of the American Asylum for the Education of the Deaf and Dumb, will show how numerous these recurrences are among the pupils of our older institutions. Okay, so this is all being published to the National Academy of Science. And he's basically trying to connect the fact that like a lot of deaf people, we have the same last name, and this is how he's coming to conclusions about genetic deafness. So keep in mind that all medical, research and information about deafness comes from this. So he basically put together a table, and it's how many times the names occur from different peoples that are deaf inside of his family, and then it has like all of the names from like 26, 20, 17, 5, 4, 3, 2, and even 1 times. And so he does different tables about this. One table is he's listing each of the names. Then in table 2, he is showing he doesn't list the names. He just shows how many pupils are represented from how many names like occur out of how out of time. So like 764 names occur 1 time versus 1 name occurs 25 times. I don't know if I explained that right. Um, and then he has a third table where he goes into the percentages of those and all of that. So he's talking about how 764 names occur once, and that is like 36% of the people. Um, and then in table 4, he is showing the classifications of people is to respect residents. Oh, sorry, I'm like so not used to the way this is worded. I was like freaking out for a second there. Um, Basically in this one he's basically talking about where these people live and how many people there are. So Maine 336, which makes sense because that was where this place was located, was up in that area, versus Louisiana was 1. um and so I've been going into these tables, but I've been skipping over the words. I'm about to go over some of those words real quick that he said. But in another table, he went into. Okay, no, these are just repeating those tables. All right, so let me go talk about some of what was said. AGB said the following tables show that the pupils referred to above constitute more than 63% of the total numbers of pupils admitted. Then he says, the American Asylum at Hartford, Connecticut was established in 1817 under the patronage of Congress as a school to be open to all the deaf mutes of the United States. as new centers of instruction sprang up on the supply of pupils from the more distant states was practically cut off, and the institution is more representative of the New England states than of the whole country. This will be obvious from the following table, which gives a synopsis of 2,100 cases admitted to the asylum before May 1877, classified according to residence. In order to show that the numerous recurrence of surnames is not confined to the deaf mutes of the New England states, nor to the pupils of our oldest institutions, I give a list of recurring sorry, I lost my place. I give a list of recurring surnames taken from the 1882 report of the Illinois Institution. This institution, although only opened in 1846, is now the largest of its kind in the world, and it may be fairly taken as representative of a large section of a country in the West. Quick side note, linked in the description is the PDF I'm reading, because on screen I know I sometimes forget to shift it around to where I'm reading if you can't see it all fully. Alright. And the reason I'm doing a deep dive on all of this also is because I do mention this a lot, and so that way if anybody is also kind of interested in this whole shit fuckery, and curious as to my thoughts on some of the things said, and kind of, or for people who process things better in an audio way versus reading this whole document, that's why I am doing this, because there's a lot of pages, and because it all connects with a lot of the things that I've been talking about with Alexander Graham Bell, and I read from this a lot when I'm talking about deaf oppression. So yeah, just for all of those reasons, I wanted to make sure that it was somewhat accessible. Okay. So the following tables show that the pupils referred to above constitute more than 41% of the whole number of pupils admitted. And above, they're talking about specifically between the years 1846 and 1882 that they documented. Okay, so the recurrence of numerous surnames among the pupils of very many of our institutions for the deaf and dumb renders it highly probable that a considerable proportion of the deaf mutes of the country belong to families containing more than one deaf mute, and hence possess hereditary tendencies to deafness. Okay, and so slight sidetrack, but kind of relevant. So with the whole history of deaf mutes and deaf dumb that they're calling us here, and deaf dumb and deaf mute, and how that applies to hearing impaired, how we're here now. So back in the day, they were calling us deaf and dumb, and we were like, stop calling us deaf and dumb, we are just deaf. And then they were like, no, fine, you're hearing impaired. And so, they just keep trying to degrade us in a way. Uh, but yeah, so reading on, AGB said the same conclusion is still more forcibly suggested to the mind by a perusal of the few institution reports that record the deaf-mute relatives of the pupils. The following tables bearing upon this subject have been compiled from the 1877 report of the American Asylum. And you just know if they're calling it asylum, shit is fucked up. They show that of 2,106 pupils admitted to that institution, 693, or nearly 33%, were known to have deaf-mute relatives. The significance of this becomes more apparent when we find that in the majority of these cases, the pupils have more than one relative deaf and dumb, On a few cases, as many as 15 deaf-mute relatives are recorded. So, and I know this shit is really boring, but when we get to the conclusion later, we get to some of the crap he says later on. All of this, if you've sat through all of this stuff, you're gonna be like, oh fuck, and it all connects later. Oh, hi Augusto. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you joining me. Yes, I do love to research deaf history because I am deaf. But also it's like I've been trying to share like this information like my whole life from my own perspective. And no one believes me when I say how I feel from what I feel, but when I go and I show the sources, other people experience the same thing as me, then people are like, oh, okay, now you must be telling the truth, And so that's kind of how I got like so obsessed with studying it all because of being like gaslit by other people, not you, of course. And so now we're here in this live where I'm talking about this 100-page book, and I think I'm like already 30 minutes in. Um, and okay, you know what? 14 pages, 30 minutes in. We're making time. We're making time. I think I've probably covered 4 to 10 pages because I know some of those pages at the beginning, they weren't real pages. They were like blinkety blinks. But yeah, um, I forgot. I think I finished this thingy. I forgot where I left off. But this next table that this dude shows, he's talking about, he lists the deaf, he calls it deaf and dumb's relatives and pupils. So then he starts listing, how many relatives deaf people have, like one great grandfather, two sisters, two brothers, one sister. Like he's like listing all these things. So he's realizing, because like at the beginning of all of this, he was like, what if we could eliminate deaf people through breeding humans through variation? But now he's seeing, but wait a minute, there's hearing people related to deaf people. And this is how he's coming to the conclusion that deafness is genetic, and that not only is deafness genetic, hearing people can give birth to deaf people. So he's like, fuck, how am I gonna breed out deaf people? You know what I mean? And we'll keep going, and you'll see like some of the shit he says, how bad it gets if you have time. Um, and I might have to do multiple lives because y'all know I get sidetracked. But yes. And so then this next table, this ass dip shows. I don't even know what the fucking ass dip is. What is an ass dip? I don't want to think about that. My bad. This live is gonna get censored. So he's like does another, so he does two different tables of two different versions of showing the relationships between deaf people and their relatives. um and then he does another table that shows like how many pupils had how many relationships with deaf people. And then he does another table that shows how many hearing people had deaf kids. Then he does another table about how many hearing people had deaf brothers and sisters. Um, then he did another table showing the number of pupils having one or more deaf relatives all together again in a different way. So, like, what the hell is all of this shit? We're going to connect these dots later, but yeah, so. Because if I tell you the end result and you didn't see how I got here, I should be a historian or teacher in deaf schools. I don't think that I have the mental health stability to do all of that. I wish I could. I wonder what happens if I pin this. Is that how you get it to show up in a video? Oh, that's how you get it up there. I'm gonna unpin that. Sorry about that. I was just like not used to what these messages do. Okay, cool. Sorry. I'm learning how to, this is my very first YouTube live, so I'm just, learning on how to work all of this. All right, so we're going to keep reading here. Without going into detail, The results may be noted of an examination of a few other institution reports where the deaf mute relatives are recorded. Oh yes, curse word. I curse a lot. Emily D. Baker, she's a lawyer on YouTube. She in her intro, she goes, "I'm a big fan of the cursey words," and I really fucking thought about adding some shit like that to my intro. I want to redo it. I just threw one up there. I don't even know if it's streamed right, so we're gonna find out later. Um, but yeah, fucking. Nah, I really appreciate you being here. And you telling me I should be a historian really means a lot to me. And you telling me, teacher in deaf schools, that means a lot. Oh, you're the only deaf in your family, so you're unique also. That's great. I love that. So I have like a lot of deaf cousins. My dad is deaf. That's grandfather. This is dad. My bad. But my dad is deaf. My cousin, I have several deaf cousins. I'm the only deaf of my siblings. They're all hearing. Uh, but deafness runs in my family on both sides. But it skips people. Like not everybody thinks, oh, if deafness runs in your family, every person is deaf. But that's not true. Um, but yes, you are unique. And us deaf, we're like, I think it's like 10 to 15%. I think we're like 15% of the population in the United States. And I think it's closer to 10% worldwide. But I could be wrong on those stats. But I think it's something like that. So, we're usually, oftentimes, the only deaf in the room. I know I am. I'm sure you are too. Um, but yeah, fucking, this motherfucker, he was all like, I gotta stop saying motherfucker. I recently learned the history of that word, and as we've already discussed, I just curse a lot. But that's one of those things where I keep realizing I'm saying it, but I don't want to say it anymore. But within, I think it's about a couple weeks ago, I learned the history and the origin of that word. And I don't want to say it anymore, but I keep saying it. Um, I appreciate you telling me I'm fine. My ringtone is like, hey, damn, you looking fine. You looking fine. It's bring that ass over here. That's my ringtone. It's just I forgot that dude's name though that was singing it. But yeah, my bad. I didn't mean to steal your shit. I just forgot your name. Um, but all right, keep reading. So he shows the a table with the proportion of deaf people having deaf relatives. And it says the above table shows us that out of 5,823 deaf mutes taken from different parts of the country, no less than 1,719, or about 29%, were known to have relatives deaf and dumb. If this proportion holds for the whole country, we must have in the United States about 10,000 deaf mutes who belong to families um, containing more than one deaf mute. It is to be feared that the intermarriage of such persons would be attended by calamitous results to their offspring. What? Are you fucking kidding me? This dude said it is to be feared that the intermarriage of such persons would be attended by calamitous results to their offsprings. He's saying it is to be feared that deaf people marrying each other would be calamitous results to our children. Holy shit. Alright, I tried this Alexander Graham Bell buffer. Let's see if it fucking works. It's supposed to say, what the hell, Alexander Graham Bell? So, I don't know if that worked or not, but I did it. So, fucking these are, and then he goes on to say, these are not, however, the only cases in which we would anticipate that the deafness of the parents might be transmitted to the children. The lessons we have learned from the lower animals concerning heredity teach us that a certain physical peculiarity, which may normally make its appearance only sporadically here and there, may be perpetuated and rendered hereditary by suitable selection during a number of generations of those individuals that happen to possess the peculiarity from birth. I have no fucking clue if I'm saying that word right. Um, la la la, anemone, 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 anemone. Okay. Um, we have good reason, therefore, to fear that the intermarriage of congenital deaf mutes, even though the deafness in both cases might be sporadic, would result in many cases in the production of deaf offspring. And yet the Augusto Lazo in the comments said, and yes, there is certain less than 10% of deaf people have access for education. Absolutely, because most deaf people, we don't have an accessible language for us because people don't sign for us and we don't have, captions a lot of the time. So, and then if you're hard of hearing, they decide that you're not deaf enough, and you're like, I'm missing a third of the ABCs, can never hear them, will never hear them, have never heard them, don't know what the fuck they sound like. And you're all like, yeah, it's fine if you don't know what we're saying all the time. You just make shit up, you'll be alright. That's really how they treat us. Fucking. And it all started with this Alexander Graham Bell dipshit getting sign language eliminated in 1880 and then publishing shit like this. Fucking. And then after that, after he was saying to we have good reason to fear that the deaf people marrying each other, even if deafness is sporadic, would result in more deaf people being born. I don't know, but you really enjoy me cursing. Well, shit, man, I curse a lot, so you stick around. You know, I do not recommend taking a shot every time I curse because you will end up with alcohol poisoning. So do not do that. Be safe. Maybe every other two or three curse words, that would be a good drinking game. Um, if you smoke weed. You know what? I'm a recovering alcoholic. I think that's why I said that. If you don't drink, I hope I'm being respectful because I don't drink and the recovering alcoholic in me is coming out of that comment. I just, you know what I mean? um, but yeah, fucking, then this asshole said the compendium of the 10th census of the United States shows us that there were living in this country on the 1st of June 1880 no less than 33,878 deaf mutes, and that more than one half were congenitally deaf. Oh, I fucking love this. I love that you put this in here. So you're saying in the year that you got sign language banned in the entire world at the Milan Conference of fucking 1880, you knew that there were 33,000, almost 34,000 deaf people, and you were just like, yeah, fuck them. They don't need access. Yeah, fuck you, dude. All right. And then he kept saying, the proportion can be obtained more exactly from an address delivered in Jacksonville, I think that's Illinois, on the 29th day of August 1882. Watch there be no Jacksonville, Illinois. That would be fucking funny. Before the 10th Convention of American Instructors of the Deaf and Dumb by the Reverend Fred, I can't read his name, who cares, who had charge of the Department of the Census relating to the deaf and dumb. I have no clue what the fuck that's fucking meant. You just make me laugh, but back to the topic. I'm glad I make somebody laugh because my life is a joke. Um, you know what? 29th day of August, that's Katrina anniversary. Fucking yeah, man. All right. So, oh, you're just talking about where this shit came from. So, pending the full publication of the census returns, the statements of Mr. Wines concerning the census of the deaf and dumb must evidently be received as authoritative. And I feel like I'm much normally a better reader. I swear to fucking God, dude. Like, I used to be that kid, like, when you had to read in English or theater. I would love that shit because I love acting. So I'd be like, yeah, let me get into character. It's my turn to read, bitch. But it's so hard to read this fucking memoir. Like, you You lived your whole fucking life. You're like, let me write a fucking memoir. And this is the shit you really chose to publish. This is the shit you really, like, what the hell, asshole? Like, okay, alright, okie dokie. And the address referred to Mr. Wines gave the result of analysis of 22,472 cases from the census, from which it appeared that of the deaf mutes, 12,154, or 54.1%, were reported as congenitally deaf, and 10,318, or 45.9%, were stated to have lost their hearing after birth. So, at this time, about 50% of deaf people were born deaf. I wonder if that's still true. I'm gonna have to look that up. But fucking yeah, man. Intrigue. Okay, and then he said, if we apply these figures to the total mentioned and the compendium of the census, we find that there are probably 18,328 congenital and 15,556 non-congenital deaf mutes in the United States. It isn't a joke. You are a stunning, beautiful, smart lady. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Um, and I am looking forward. I like communicating with you. You know, I love the conversations we're having, and I really appreciate you showing up and just being supportive. Like, that means a lot to me. So thank you. I appreciate you. Alrighty, and this motherfucker, what does he say next? Deductions drawn from the. Oh, hell no. Deductions drawn from the breeding of animals would lead us to expect that the congenitally deaf would be more likely than those who became deaf from accidental causes to transmit their defect to the offspring. So this bitch, this motherfucker, he is not only talking about removing deafness in relation to breeding animals fucking again, because I think he did that shit in the intro. He's also fucking saying that we are a defect. What the fuck? Oh, you were born here, it's your language. Just kidding. I'm Latina. I barely passed my reading exam in English. Just kidding. Well, mi español es muy malo, so lo siento. Porque mi español es mierda. I only know the words to Selena songs. I'm over here like como la flor. But no, dude, you know, you're bilingual at least. You know, being multilingual is hard, and you talk to me in English just fine. Like, I would have thought that was your first language if you hadn't said something. So, um, yeah, like, I think that's awesome. I always like meeting different people from other places too. Fucking, I'm over here thinking about Selena and Yolanda Shit, is it Saldivar or Salvador? Is it the D or the V first? I don't know, but Yolanda is a fucking cunt. See you next Tuesday. And fucking, you know what? I hope she does come out, and I hope she has a great time when she comes out. I hope she goes and plays in traffic and a game of leapfrog, Frogger. Why do I keep calling Frogger leapfrog? I hope she plays Frogger with herself. Where is the busiest highway in America? That's where Yolanda needs to be. But, okay, I'm sorry. Alexander Graham Bell's not alive anymore, but Yolanda is. Wait. What am I waiting for? Um, so yeah. I can sing Selena's song. Oh, I sing really bad, but I only know like this. I only know certain lyrics for the song. I only know part of the lyrics to Como la Flor, and I don't even know if it's the right lyrics. But what I know is Como la flor, con tanto amor, me diste tú, se marchitó, Memoir hoy, yo sé perder, pero ay, como me duele. Please don't copyright strike my video. I'm sorry. I hope that's cool, Selena's family. But yeah, no, I have my demos on my video. It's my like top video right now on my page, on my YouTube page. I have some of my demos on there. And I want to make music, and there's a lot of deaf musicians, there's a lot of deaf artists, you know, and I have like friends who make music and family that makes music that are deaf, and I have a friend who's a deaf dancer. So eventually I want to do shows and really represent the deaf community with my music and my art and my shows, and collaborate with and show other deaf people. Um, all right, we're gonna keep moving. Another indication pointing in the same direction is to be found in the fact that the proportion of the deaf and the dumb who have deaf-mute relatives is very much greater among the congenital than among the non-congenital deaf mutes. The following tables have been compiled from the reports of the American Institutions for the Deaf and Dumb already referred to. I fucking hate that they call us deaf and dumb, and every time I read it, I want to say a disclaimer for it, but if I did that, we'd never get through this motherfucking thing. Um, where's my ring? Hold up. Okay, Beyonce. If you like it, then you got it. Whatever you got it. I mean, thinking of the lyrics to that song. Right? How is it? If you like it, then you what? Put a ring on it. If you like it, then you. I don't know the lyrics to that song. Shit. Oh well. The following tables have been compiled from the reports of the American Institution from the Deaf and Dumb. I refer to. Okay, so this one is a compendium and it shows like the institutions in the United States it at this time for of the deaf. It shows the years that they were tracking from, and then it shows total number of people who had congenital deafness, who had a disease or accident. No, deafness is never a disease, assholes. Not stated and stuff like that, breaking down our diseases. I fucking hate this shit. Um, and then he was saying earlier, like, oh, you should be a deaf historian, you're good at deaf history. And I'm over here like, I fucking hate you, you stupid ass piece of shit. AGB, suck my dick, bitch, fuck you. I could not be a history teacher because I would be like, all right, class, here's what you need to know today. Um, not what like the, right now I'm indoctrinating you as a teacher because this public school system and private school systems are indoctrination institution meant to colonize you further. Don't listen to me, don't listen to anybody. um you know what I mean? Like, I would be the best worst teacher ever. I want to be like Jack Black in School of Rock, you know what the fuck I mean? um but yeah, fucking. So then they go and they're like doing another breakdown of deaf people who have deaf relatives, but by the institutions this time. Uh, and then these motherfuckers are saying the above tables show that of 2,602 congenital deaf mutes, more than one half, or 54.5%, had deaf mute relatives. And that what the fuck does that say? Oh, and that even in the case of those pupils who become deaf from apparently accidental causes, 13.8% had other members of their families deaf and dumb. I don't know what the fuck this is fucking meaning, but okay. Oh, they're just breaking it down by institutions. And then if we apply these results to the total return by the 10th census, we obtain the following figures. As a probable approximation to the number of sporadic and non-sporadic cases of deafness among the deaf mutes of the country. These people suck ass. They're just, now they're trying to debate whether or not deafness is sporadic or not. Because, oh yes, be right back. Take your time. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate you. I'm not going to be right back. I was reading a comment. I apologize. I'm staying here. But Yeah, man, fucking, if we, the, they're trying to differentiate between sporadic and non-sporadic cases of deafness because like we were discussing earlier, like I was saying, in my family, like deafness is genetic in my family, but not every person in my family is deaf. Now I do know, I can think of a couple of families off the top of my head that I know personally where everybody in that family is deaf. The parents are deaf, the grandparents are deaf, kids are deaf, you know. So in some cases, and I don't even know what, like, how genetically that happens, but in some cases, you know, like the can be like that. It's not sporadic. It's every generation's deaf. But in my case, it's every generation in my family has deafness, but not every person of each generation is. It's spread out through us. Um, and then there's another table breaking it down between congenital deafness and whether or not it's a disease or accident. And then it says if to the estimated number of deaf mutes who have relatives deaf and dumb, we add the presumed number of sporadic cases among the congenital deaf mutes, we reach a total of 20,474 cases where the deafness would probably tend to become hereditary by intermarriage. But these are all cases. But these are not all the cases these are not all the cases in which we would anticipate that intermarriage might be productive of deaf offspring. The late Dr. Harvey L.P. states, as a result of his researches, that the hearing brothers and sisters of a deaf mute are about as liable to have deafness as are about as liable to have deaf children. Obviously, hearing people don't have deafness. My bad. Okay. The late Dr. Harvey L. Peach states, as a result of his researches, that the hearing brothers and sisters of a deaf mute are about as liable to have deaf children as the deaf mute himself. It is only reasonable to assume that a tendency towards deafness exists in a family containing more than one deaf mute, so that if hearing persons belonging to such families were to intermarry, or were to marry deaf mutes, or if a cosanguineous, what the, I don't know what that word is. I don't know how to say this word. I don't know how to pronounce this word. I don't know what this word means. Cosanguineous, some type of marriage. If what the fuck word is that? If a somewhat, what the hell? Cosanguineous? What the hell? Okay, I'm gonna stop. I sound silly. Okie dokie. let's take it from the top, and we're gonna skip this word. So that I'm gonna beep at this word. So that if hearing persons belonging to such families were to intermarry or were to marry deaf mutes, or if a beep marriage were to take place in such a family, we would not be surprised if some of the offspring should be deaf. Yes, I'm going to beep for this word I can't fucking pronounce, but not for a curse word. Absolutely. Um, but in addition, therefore, to the 20,474 deaf mutes referred to above, we must include the hearing and speaking members of their family before we can form an adequate conception of the number of persons who possess a predisposition towards deafness. It will thus be seen that we have abundant materials in the United States for the formation of a deaf variety of the human race by selection in marriage. Let's read this back again. It will thus be seen that we have abundant materials in the United States for the formation of a deaf variety of the human race by selection in marriage. What the hell, Alexander Graham Bell? Um, yeah, dude. Alright, so let's talk about all of this real quick. Fucking motherfucker, dude. This dude told me try reading this in Spanish, it may work. No puedo hablar en español. Um, no creo que leer en español también. He told me to try reading in Spanish. I said, I can't speak in Spanish. I don't think I can read in Spanish too. Fucking, I don't know if I said that right, but that's what I tried to say. Um, Fucking. So, yeah, man. So he's saying we've got everything we need in this country. America, shotguns, and Jesus. Um, and we got everything in this country to for the formation of a deaf variety of the human race by selection and marriage. So he's saying if deaf people want to try and marry each other, they're going to form a new race of people. They're going to breed with each other and breed more. Like, he's trying to incite this type of fear mongering about, oh no, what if deaf people are like existing? And what if they live? And what if they keep living? Wouldn't it be bad if deaf people were just like alive? Like, that's literally what he's doing. And this is what I was telling you guys. Like, I know it's boring. You know, it's like, okay, we're getting through like all of this shit, but you have to read all of this to understand. So that way when I tell you, like, this is the evidence. So when I'm telling you this guy is a genocidal maniac who wants to off deaf people, you can see why I fucking think that. But if I just say that, people are like, why would he say that? But then I'll have to be like, he, like telling the whole fucking story. He said I sound cute. Thank you. I'm over here singing Jay and Silent Bob's rap, and he's like, that's cute. But yeah, man, it's like this whole thing. All right, so that concludes chapter 1. And now we're going to be moving on to chapter 2. But before we do, what was chapter 1 called again? Does it tell me? Um, So chapter 1 is called Upon the Materials for the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race at Present Existing in America. And you can now see how we covered all of that with that title. He's saying, look, these deaf people, they live here. And look, they got other deaf people living here. They got family. Look, you man, deaf people are existing, they're breathing, they're living here. Deaf people, they're gonna keep living. What if they just fucking keep living? Holy shit, what would we do? So that was chapter 1. And now we're gonna be moving on to chapter 2. And chapter 2 is all about marriages of the deaf. And it's, yeah. So let's see, it's been about an hour. So it took me an hour to get through the intro in chapter 2. There's 6 chapters plus a really large appendix and a conclusion to get through. So I'm thinking we're definitely going to have to schedule more lives for this. I'm totally going to be continuing with chapter 2 right now. Uh, so we're going to finish chapter 2. We're going to see how I feel after chapter 2. We might have to end after chapter 2, or we might be able to do chapter 3. And then if I end at chapter 2, I think it'll take me maybe 2 more lives to finish this all. If I end at chapter 3, I think I can finish this in possibly 1 more live. Um, So, but yeah, it's definitely gonna take me between 1 and 2 to 3, maybe more lives, I think, to cover this. Because when I first started, I wasn't sure if I was gonna get all one and done in 1 live, if we were gonna do multiple. But yeah, so we're at an hour right now. And I want to thank everybody for being with me today. And every fucking word, it gets my attention even more. Well, I'm just here to help. I'm here to make sure you are alert. You gotta stay aware. What if just like every now and then, I just did some crazy shit, I'll be like reading the fucking book, like being over here like boring and shit, reading, and just every now and then just like, like, you know what I mean? Like jump scare. I don't know. But, um, yeah. Alright. Chapter 2 is called Marriages of the Deaf. We're going to keep going. So, having shown that a large proportion of the deaf and dumb possess hereditary tendencies towards deafness, the question naturally arises, do many of the deaf and dumb marry? It is the fuck word is that? Oh, that's custom. My bad. Yeah, you can see I have bad vision. We're like, I might try to read a word and I start like closing different eyes. um, but yeah, so it is the custom in some of our institutions to hold periodical reunions of former pupils, and in some cases, advantage has been taken of the opportunities thus presented to obtain information concerning the marriages of the pupils, etc. An examination of the reports of the American Asylum, New York, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois institutions yield the following results. So then it shows a table and it shows the name of the schools, and then it shows the date of the opening, the date of their reporting, their pupils, their marriages, and the percentages. Yeah, I am so glad that you were having fun because, I was like, I wanted to do this live because, I feel so passionate about it. But then I was just like, people are going to think it's so boring. But so, like, I'm like so fucking excited that you're here. I'm so happy you're here. And we're in this together. We can shit talk AGB together because fuck this dude. What the fuck? Oh my god, what the fuck reminds me of that Sac Noel song? Where it's like, Johnny, la gente está muy loca. What the fuck? I'm sorry. That was back in my Molly days. You know what I mean? Like, um, alright. And shit, I'm over here talking about Molly. My bad. So, you know what? I'm surprised I haven't talked about weed yet. But moving on, in the appendix, I'm reading Alexander Graham Bell's words here. In the appendix, I have presented in tabular form a critical analysis. I wouldn't call this a critical analysis, but okay. Of all the cases mentioned in the reports of the American Asylum and Illinois Institution, classifying the pupils according to the decades in which they were born. The labor involved has deterred me from making a similar examination of the pupils of the New York, Ohio, and Indiana institutions until more complete materials can be obtained than are to be found in reports published in 1854. The American Asylum and Illinois Institution, however, as I have stated before, may be... Oh, okay. At first I thought I was having like a brain freeze because I was seeing the words maybe, maybe twice, but no, that was them. That's what they fucking wrote. So, the American Asylum and Illinois Institution, however, as I have stated before, may be taken as representative institutions, and an examination of the tables and the appendix leads to the conclusion that a very considerable proportion of the deaf children admitted to our institutions marry. He's saying a lot of deaf people get married. So fucking what, dipshit? You, oh my fucking god. You really did all this research to come to the conclusion that deaf people get married? We're fucking deaf, asshole. Oh, a commenter. Bad vision, blind, and deaf. Yep, you're definitely unique. Cute. I appreciate you. Yes, I am blind and deaf. I'm low vision. I'm like legally I have a restriction on my driver's license because I am low vision. And my audiograms, they're on my website. I also placed them on the intro of this video, and they're in several other videos I've made on YouTube. But my audiograms are very public, like I'm deaf, and I am legally deaf blind. Um so yeah. But yeah, no, I'm just shocked. Like, he did all this research just to come to the fucking conclusion that deaf people get fucking married. Like, no shit, asshole. We're fucking human beings. And I had said this before, so y'all missed any of that, or in case you forgot, like, linked in the description of this YouTube video, I do have the link to this document that I'm reading. For anyone that wants to follow along yourself, or whenever, if I forget to make sure that the words are in focus on the screen, because I keep forgetting. So that's my bad. I'll try to remember. All right. So then, this motherfucker, shit, I said that word again. I gotta stop saying that. Okay, I'm gonna try and stop myself every time I say that. Alright. Then this asshole said, pupils of the American asylum born in the year 1840 were 37. Oh, knocking stuff over here. My bad. So I'm live on TikTok. I've been live on TikTok to also just get awareness on this video as well. And my live was about to end in 30 seconds if I didn't do this thingy. It might end on there. My bad. I'm gonna just focus on this YouTube live. Oh no, it's back up. Okie dokie. Yeah. The more the merrier. My apologies. All right. So, but YouTube is the place to be because, like, I'm doing these lives on my TikTok as well, so that way people can see what I'm working on. But YouTube is where you can fully better see everything. So, then this asshole says, oh, I just said that fucking shit. My bad. So he was saying in 1840, um, people born in 1840 were 37 in 1877. No fucking shit. And then he was saying people born in 1840 were 42 in 1882. All right. Hence, we may safely assume that of the pupils of these institutions who were born before 1840, all or nearly all who intended to marry had married before the dates of the reports, and in most cases it is probable that the fact of marriage had been recorded. If then we eliminate from the totals given in the above table all the pupils of these institutions who were born since the year 1839, we obtain the following results. So he's basically looking at this one group of people from this one school born in this one year to this following table where he breaks it down by institution, the number of people born before 1840 and the number of people who are married and the percentage of them. And then he says whatever may be the exact percentage for the whole country, the indications are that a considerable proportion of the deaf mutes in the United States are married. So he's literally basically still complaining that deaf people get married. Okay, what else did Augusto say? Augusto said, don't worry if you're becoming blind, I'll be your eyes. But since you're deaf, then we are screwed? Just kidding. Well, that type of mindset could be considered like, I don't think that you meant it to be in a discriminatory way, but I do think it comes from the history of it, like, because I know you were deaf too. So, but yeah, but like I'm not becoming, I actually don't think I've lost more vision. Maybe I have. I actually need to go to eye doctor. But yeah, fucking, I don't know. I wouldn't use that line for the social issue reasons behind, like there's nothing wrong with being deaf or blind, but I mean, you're deaf, so I know that you're just speaking from like also like your own perspective on like maybe like ways people talk to you as a deaf person too. So I understand for sure how it is also. And I just like, I always, like, I keep having to stop myself from saying the MF curse word because I don't want to say that curse word anymore because I recently learned the history of it, So I feel like part of decolonizing is like constantly having to adjust our language. Um, but yeah, I said decolonizing. But whatever, fucking the captions. I don't know if the captioner got that, but my bad. I apologize if the captioner is getting anything wrong. It's just hard for me to read, sign, and speak. So I was like, let me just put the captioner up. And I was put the auto captioner up on here, and I have the caption set on the YouTube video. I have it both so that way it can be cross-referenced, and things like that. So yeah. All right. And then this next section is called Intermarriages of the Deaf and Dumb. It's not a new chapter, it's just a new section of this same chapter too. Um, and then it says, when we attempt to form an idea of the extent to which intermarriage takes place among deaf mutes, we are met by the difficulty of the imperfection of the institution records. A commenter said, it is just a joke, don't take it seriously. Totally understand when you intend for something to be lighthearted or funny, but when it comes to impact, I feel like sometimes, impact can be a little bit more important than intention, and I totally understand the intention. It's just a joke, and it's not about taking it too seriously in terms of not wanting to be lighthearted or have fun, but more in terms of reflecting on why would that be lighthearted? Why is it funny? So why is it a joke? Can you it's things like that. It's just also I think about respecting people in their space. You don't. I'm not trying to change your mind about how you feel about a thing in your own space. It's just more about what I have in my own space. He actually hard of hearing, but most people say I have good speech, and I'll be like, thanks my speech therapist, is what a commenter said. I'm hard of hearing too. I identify as deaf because why am I hard of hearing? Deafness. I'm deaf. And when you're hard of hearing, the definition of hard of hearing is that you have deafness at ranges of hearing which impact your ability to understand speech. I was also in speech therapy for 8 years, so I understand that. A lot of people, they'll be like, "You're not deaf because you can speak," and we have AGB to thank for that, and that's literally why I'm reading this whole book. Because at the end, oh my fucking god, I don't want to ruin the end, but you're making me want to ruin the end right now. But when I blame Alexander Graham Bell for why we are speaking, I am not exaggerating, and the end of this book is fucking proof. When I show you the end of the memoir, fucking yeah, dude. It says that the captioner says when I show you the end of the moon, but I said memoir. But yeah. And then this dipshit said, in very few cases, it is specifically stated that a deaf mute has married a hearing person, and that has an asterisk. I actually know a lot of deaf people that have married hearing people, you know what I mean? The record usually stands that the pupil has married a deaf mute or that he is simply married, leaving it uncertain whether the marriage is contracted with another deaf mute or with a hearing person. Why does it fucking matter who a deaf person is with, dude? What is the whole fucking point of this goddamn memoir besides you being a little motherfucking ableist piece of shit? But anywho, and then he says, when we eliminate all the uncertain cases, we obtain from the institution reports the following materials. And then it's a table that shows the proportion of the deaf and who marry other deaf. But he calls it deaf and dumb who marry deaf mutes. What the shit? What the shit? And after that, he says, the largest percentage of marriages with deaf mutes reported from Indiana and Illinois suggests the explanation that intermarriages among the deaf and dumb may perhaps have become more common of late years. Both institutions are of comparatively recent origin, the one founded in 1844, the other in 1846. And the report of the Illinois institution, which exhibits the largest proportion of deaf-mute intermarriages, contains the record of such later marriages than those mentioned in the Indiana report. For the Indiana record stops at 1854, whereas the Illinois report gives the statistics of the institution to October 1882. Unfortunately, we are unable to ascertain from the reports the dates of the marriages. If we assume, however, that as a general rule, the older deaf mutes who were married before the younger, we may be able to approximate to the order of the marriages by classifying the pupils according to their period of birth. Although I have not attempted a minute classification, excepting in the cases shown in the appendix, it is comparatively easy to arrange all the married pupils referred to above into four classes: those born before 1810, those born in the period 1810 to 1839, those born in the period 1840 to 1859, those born since the commencement of 1860. The results are shown in the following table. And then that's literally, he does this table of that. And then the next statement that he fucking says, the number married who were born since 1859 is too small to be relied upon for a percentage. It is only to be hoped that the percentage given above is excessive. The indications are very clear, however, that of the deaf and deaf-dumb who marry, the proportion who marry deaf-mutes has steadily increased. This conclusion is strengthened when we find that the above result, which has been, I think that should be deemed, which has been deemed from the assumption, oh, that's deduced. The conclusion is strengthened when we find that the above result, which has been deduced from a summation of all the cases recorded in the reports of the American Asylum, New York, Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois institutions, is also true of the cases recorded in each report taken separately. Gotta go eat, so have fun. We'll catch up more later. I appreciate you, Augusto. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to be putting timestamps after I'm done with the video in the description, so you'll be able to skip around if you do want to come back on the replay to see the end of this. You'll be able to skip all the parts you've already seen before and click right on through to the next part. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. I appreciate you. Take care of yourself. So yeah, fucking what was I saying? Oh yeah, so he was then it was, they were talking about the conclusion of, oh no, deaf people are getting married, and then he says this will be obvious from the following table. The only institution that gives any indication of a decrease in the proportion of pupils married to deaf-mutes is the American Asylum. The pupils born in 1859 were only 18 years of age. In 1877, the date of the report, so that it is certain that a considerable number of the pupils born between 1840 and 1859 were married after the date of the report, and so escaped enumeration. It is questionable, however, whether this could affect the proportion who were married to deaf mutes. The fuck? So basically they're saying people born after a certain time period were not, or before a certain time period were not reported on, and so they don't know if this impacts the report. And then he was saying it is more reasonable to suppose that in this case the apparent decrease is real, for an entirely different method of investigation leads to a similar result. In the years 1843, 1857, 1867, and 1877, the directors of the American Asylum published in their report statistics of the institution, given the names of those pupils who had married. If we assume that the pupils who were not recorded as married in the 1843 report, but who were recorded as married in the 1857 report, were married between the 2 years 1843 and 1857, we can divide the marriages reported from the American Asylum into four classes: Marriages contracted before 1843, marriages contracted between 1843 and 1857, marriages contracted between 1857 and 1867, and marriages contracted between 1867 and 1877. I don't know what the fuck the point is in fucking classifying when deaf people are getting married each other by years, but okay, let's keep going. The results are shown in the following table. And then it shows us a table of that shit. And then it keeps going. In this case, we find that although the number of peoples presumed to have married between 1867 and 1877 is greater than the number who married in the preceding decade, the proportion who married deaf mutes is less. It is evident from a comparison of all the tables that of the deaf mutes who marry at the present time, not less than 80% marry deaf mutes, while of those who married during the early half of the present century, the proportion who married deaf mutes was much smaller. It is, of course, a matter of importance to ascertain to what extent congenital deaf mutes intermarry, but unfortunately, the institution records are too imperfect to allow us to draw conclusions on this point. 664 pupils of the American Asylum and Illinois Institution are each recorded simply to have married a deaf mute, without one word of explanation as to the name of the deaf mute or the cause of deafness. Because that doesn't fucking matter when you're getting married, asshole. It will thus be understood that the records of deaf-mute marriages are very imperfect, and it is to be hoped that some of our large institutions may publish fuller information concerning them. In the case of a deaf-mute partner, it should be stated whether the deafness was congenital or not. Why? Why should it be stated? Why does it fucking matter? I would also suggest that, wherever possible, the names of the husbands and wives of the pupils should be given, and the fact, I'm sorry, I was making sure it was on screen, and the fact recorded as to whether they belong to families containing more than one deaf mute or not. This is important even in the case of marriage with a hearing person, for in most of the cases of such marriages that have come under my personal observation, the hearing partner belonged to a family containing deaf mutes. However imperfect may be the records of the marriages of the deaf, it is abundantly evident that there is a tendency among deaf mutes to select deaf mutes as their partners in marriage. That this tendency has been continuously exhibited during the past 40 or 50 years, and that therefore there is every probability that the selection of the deaf by the deaf in marriage will continue in the future. It is evident then that we have here to consider not an ephemeral, I don't think I'm saying this word right, ephemeral phenomenon, but a case of continuous selection. For instance, should it appear that there are in this country any considerable number of deaf mutes who are themselves the offspring of deaf mutes, the indications are that a large proportion of these persons will marry, and that of those who marry, the majority will marry deaf mutes. Thus, there is every indication that in the case of the deaf and dumb, the work of selection will go on from generation to generation. Dude, so this whole fucking memoir is literally Alexander Graham Bell bitching that deaf people are simply fucking alive. I said that deaf people are simply fucking alive, not God. But, and, because I am correcting a caption on the screen here. All right. So in about 30 minutes, I was able to read this next chapter. So I was able to read chapter 2, and let's go over to the title of chapter 2 again. The chapter 2 is called Marriages of the Deaf. I think I do have time for chapter 3, so I'm going to go ahead and bang out chapter 3 right now, and hopefully I can finish this next one up in just one more live after this. That's what I think I'm going to do. Yeah. He really, like, you know how much time it takes to write a fucking book and to do all this research? Like, how are you this obsessed with removing deaf people from the population that this is what you chose to do with your fucking life, dude? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? That is what I think when I'm reading this shit. Like, what the fuck is this? And so, I really think that it is very important for this information to be told and to be spread. And I know it's boring, I know it's mundane, but we just gotta buckle in, light her up, get in there, like, get your snacks, get cozy, like, buckle down, because it's important to know the history. It's important to understand why deaf people are treated the way we are now. So we're gonna finish up on chapter 3 today, and I'm gonna get this going now. And then, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this next live where I connect all of these pieces together. So, chapter 3, let's make sure that people can see. All right, so chapter 3 is called Deaf Mute Offspring of Deaf Mute Marriages. And I just feel like this needs to be done. So first we had our introduction, and the introduction to this entire thing is that right now what we are reading is The Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race by Alexander Graham Bell. So chapter 1 was called Upon the Materials for the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race at Present Existing in America. And within all of that, he was basically like, look, deaf people are alive. They've been living. They've got relatives. Deaf people are alive and they have family. All right, that was the whole fucking point of chapter 1. And he was basically using words to say that we are a calamity. So he was trying to fearmonger, and he was just basically like, deaf people are alive, what the fuck are we going to do about it? Was chapter 1's message and intent and tone. Then chapter 2 is Marriages of the Deaf, is what that was called. And he was basically like, look, deaf people are getting married. They're falling in love. They're getting married. Deaf people keep marrying each other. Who would want to marry a deaf person? They're getting married. I don't know who would want to marry a deaf person, but they're getting married. Do they know what type of deaf people they're marrying? These deaf people are marrying deaf people, and they don't even know what type of deaf people. That's the type of idea behind number 2. He was really upset that deaf people are getting married. All right. So now we're on to chapter 3. Deaf mute offspring of deaf mute marriages. So this is all about deaf people having kids, because we got married. All right, so we're connecting these dots here. So, in a paper upon hereditary deafness, published I can't read that. Is that 1868 or 1808? I think it's 68. Okay. In a paper upon hereditary deafness, published in 1868, I think, Reverend W.W. Turner, then principal of the American Asylum, said that statistics carefully collated from records kept of deaf mutes as they have been met in conventions at Hartford show that in 86 families with one parent, a congenital deaf mute, 1/10 of the children were deaf, and in 24 families with both parents congenital deaf mute, about 1/3 were born deaf. In support of this conclusion, he presented the following table. And then it shows the parents, and it's got 3 classes. In class 1, 1 hearing parent, 1 congenitally deaf parent. Class 2, 1 incidentally and 1 congenitally deaf. Class 3, both congenitally deaf. And then it breaks down number of families, number of children of deaf, number of children hearing in total. So Dr. Turner cited in connection with his subject the case of one woman who lived to see great-grandchildren, and of these, no less than 16 were deaf mutes. Regarding intermarriage, he said, it is a well-known fact that among domestic animals, certain unusual variations of form or color, which sometimes occur among their offspring, may, by a careful selection of others similar and by a continued breeding of like with like, be rendered permanent, so as to constitute a distinct variety. The same course adopted and pursued in the human race would undoubtedly lead to the same result. This is a lot to take in, so I think I need to read this again. So Alexander Graham Bell is quoting Dr. Turner. Dr. Turner at this time, I forgot his title, I think he was the president of the American Asylum of Deaf. This is what Dr. Turner said that Alexander Graham Bell republished and that his whole memoir agrees with. Reading this again. Regarding intermarriage, he said, it is a well-known fact that among domestic animals, certain unusual variations of form or color, which sometimes occur among their offspring, may, by a careful selection of others similar and by a continued breeding of like with like, be rendered permanent so as to constitute a distinct variety. The same course adopted and pursued in the human race would undoubtedly lead to the same result. And I apologize because on one hand I don't want to apply different forms of oppression to other forms of oppression or compare different forms of oppression to each other, but I don't want to ignore history either. But I don't think I'm the right person to talk on the history because I am white and I'm not decolonized yet. But well, I mean, decolonizing is a journey, so who is decolonized yet? But I'm not that far. You know what I mean? I don't know what words I'm using, but I don't want to misrepresent something, but I'm just saying, like, this all ties into, this is why I was bringing up slavery at the very beginning. I mentioned, a lot of what Alexander Graham Bell was saying, I think the mindset and the ideology and the popularity, this all being around the times of slavery, I think is extremely important because of what was normalized in regards to these words at this time. And I don't want to speak, I'm going to keep going. I'm an overthinker. So I'm not trying to, if I'm saying anything wrong, like definitely someone please correct me. Not that anybody owes me any free labor, but, so I can do better. That would be great. But, yeah, fucking, I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know if I'm making sense right now. So somebody tell me if I'm making sense. But yeah, oh my god, I can't fucking believe that they said this shit. Okay, and he concluded with the remark that every consideration of philanthropy as well as the interests of congenitally deaf persons themselves should induce their teachers and friends to urge upon them the impropriety of intermarriage. What the hell, Alexander Graham Bell? So, fucking, I really can't believe that this is the motherfucking president of the very first American School of the Deaf. You know what the fuck I'm saying? Like, if I'm not mistaken. And wow. Like, wow. So, This is Alexander Graham Bell has a deaf mother and a deaf wife. And he, in his memoir, is over here saying, let's tell deaf people, urge upon them the impropriety of intermarriage. You know what I'm thinking? And I'm literally just the very first time I've ever come to this realization reading this book. Alexander Graham Bell had mommy issues, okay? I really do. I really do think that. I really think AGB hated his mother, so he treated his wife like shit. And because he hated his mom so much, I think he wanted to kill his mother, but because he couldn't, he decided, let's fuck up the life of every deaf person. He decided to hate all deaf people because I think he hated his mom. And you know what I'm saying? And I honestly think his wife was possibly a pick-me-ass bitch because Alexander Graham Bell got that phone money. He was doing well. He rang it up. He ring. Like, this is conspiracy theories over here, but that's what the fuck I'm saying. Like, I really think he hated his mother and took it out on all deaf people. And this is why you need to get men in therapy ASAP. I apologize if that is ableist. That was probably ableist. I apologize. I'm working on myself, you know? But what the shit? Fucking alright. Yeah. And then they kept saying, it is reasonable to suppose that whatever influence Dr. Turner's statements may have exerted upon the intermarriages of the deaf throughout the country, his conclusions and beliefs must have had considerable weight with the pupils of his own institution, and this may perhaps have been the cause of the decrease in the proportion of intermarriages noted among the pupils of his institution since the date of his paper. In the report of the New York institution, published in the American Annals of the Deaf and Dumb, July 1854, Dr. Harvey L. Peet gave the following table showing the number of pupils of the New York institution married, as compared with the married pupils of other American institutions, and compared with the marriages of the deaf in Europe, no distinction being made between those who were congenitally deaf and those who became deaf from accidental causes. A cause is a case, or is a case a cause? Anywho, Dr. Peet stated that all of the families embraced in the table, about 1 in 20 have deaf-mute children where both parents are deaf-mutes, and about 1 in 135 where only one is a deaf-mute, and that the brothers and sisters of a deaf-mute are about as liable to have deaf-mute children as the deaf-mute himself, supposing each to marry into families that have, or each into families that have not shown a predisposition toward deaf-dumbness. Deaf people are not dumb, you're just a fucking asshole. The auto captioner is called deaf, but we're used to that. Okay, I said auto captioner, and the caption put cops nerd. Anywho, all right, moving on. So then they show a fucking table that breaks down like different deaf institutions and whether or not they married hearing people or deaf people. From this table, it appears that at the time of the and shit, god damn, this is hard to read. From this table, it appears that at the time of the investigation, 1854, marriages of deaf mutes, and especially between two deaf mutes, were far more common in America than in Europe, and that except among the pupils of New York institutions, there were twice as many deaf mute men with hearing wives as deaf mute women with hearing husbands. So I cannot speak to deaf history in other parts of the world. I do know tidbits here and there, particularly as they relate to deaf history in the United States. But overall, I mostly know deaf history as it relates to the United States or Americas. But in relation to deaf history in Europe, there is an article on my site called People Who Hear But Don't Listen, written by Leonie Holley. And she lives in the UK. She is between 5 and 10 years younger than me. Between 5 and 10 years younger than me. I cannot speak. Um, and she wrote her experience growing up deaf as a hard of hearing deaf person in the UK, and she wears a cochlear implant. So, and everybody needs to read that, whether you're deaf or hearing. If you're deaf, I think you will relate to her. And don't get, if you are culturally deaf, I know some culturally deaf people get a little put off by cochlear implants, but trust me, that was not her choice. And she talks about that um, in the article as well. So, People Hear But Don't Listen is written by deaf, hard of hearing person Leonie Holley. She's a contributing writer for my site. She worked with me. She's great. So yeah, fucking I'm gonna wrap this baby up in a minute, but here we go. We're gonna keep going. From this table, it appears that at the time of the investigation, oh, I just read that fucking shit. That's my bad. Um, Principals of institutions for the deaf and dumb have personal knowledge of their pupils and may therefore be able to arrive at correct conclusions regarding the results of intermarriage. It is extremely difficult, if not impossible, for others to arrive at an independent conclusion from the data published in the institution reports. It is even impossible to ascertain from these reports the mere number of the deaf offspring recorded as born to the pupils. The nature of the difficulty will be understood by an example. From the 1877 report of the American Asylum, we find that George W.A. married a deaf mute and had 3 deaf children. Mary R. married a deaf mute and had 3 deaf children. Jonathan M. married a deaf mute and had 3 deaf children. Paulina B. married a deaf mute and had 3 deaf kids. Now the query presents itself. How many deaf children were born to these pupils? You just told us, assholes. How is that a query? Or are you speaking generally? So here's what I don't get. They just told us, 4 people, and they just told us that each of these 4 people had 3 deaf children, right? So that's 12 deaf children, assholes. 4 times 3 is 12, motherfucker. The fuck, you can't do math and you're calling me dumb? You're writing this whole fucking memoir. What the fuck is that? How is that a rhetorical question or something? What is the point of that question? Or are you talking about in general with deafness? And then he said perhaps Mary R. was the wife of George W. Oh, now you see what you're saying. If those people were married to each other, then those are the same kids being counted. Well, alright, in which case there are only 6 deaf children. It is possible, however, that in such cases that the males and females were not related in marriage, and upon this supposition there were 12 deaf children. Who fucking cares, dude? What the shit? Why do you need to count deaf people and our children? Like, what? That's just fucking creepy. I'm gonna count your fucking blessings. Count your fucking blessings that you died already, Alexander Graham Bell. This is not bullying or harassment. That man is no longer with us. There is generally nothing in the institution reports to guide us to a solution of the problem. What fucking problem is there, dipfuck? The only problem there is you. So let's put that out there. Oh, my phone's gonna die. That's chill. If the names of the husbands and wives of pupils were recorded, it would be possible to arrive at some conclusion. As it is, the most we can do is to ascertain the number of deaf children recorded as the offspring of the male pupils, and those noted as born to the female pupils. Even though it were possible to arrive at a correct conclusion regarding the total number of deaf offspring recorded in the report, still we would not be able to ascertain the actual number of deaf children born to the pupils, for it is obvious from the following considerations that the number recorded is so much less than the number born as to lead to the inference that in a considerable proportion of cases, the deaf offspring are not recorded at all until some of the children make their appearance in the institution as pupils. This means that they may not be recorded until 10, 20, or even 25 years after the date of their birth. I may be wrong in such a supposition, but I do not know how otherwise to account for the imperfection of the records. In 1877 report of the American Asylum, the married male pupils were recorded to have had 36 deaf children born to them, and the married female pupils 28. Whereas 57 children of deaf-mute marriages have already been admitted into the institution as pupils, all of whom were born before the 1877 report was issued. This does not include a number of deaf-mutes who have been admitted into the other institutions in New England, whose parents were pupils of the American Asylum, nor does it include children too young to be sent from home. In the 1882 report of the Illinois Institution, the married male pupils were recorded to have had 10 deaf children born to them, and the married female pupils 8. Whereas 14 children have already been admitted into the Illinois institution, one or both of whose parents were deaf. A comparison of the 4 reports of the American Asylum containing the statistics of this institution shows that only a small proportion of the deaf offspring of the later marriages are recorded in the 1877 report. This will be obvious from the following table. From the table, it appears that 116 congenital deaf mutes, males and females, have married deaf mutes since the 1857 report was issued, and that only one deaf child resulted from these marriages. This is most extraordinary in view of the results obtained by Dr. Turner, which were based upon the marriages of the pupils of the same institution, and we must conclude that the records of the later marriages are defective so far as the deaf offspring are concerned. What the fuck, man? Alright, let's process this. Let's let this marinate. So, the only correct thing that Alexander Graham Bell may have said in this entire fucking memoir was this line right here where he says, I may be wrong in such a supposition. Yes, you are wrong, asshole. You're wrong as fuck. The whole fucking thing is wrong. Fuck you. Suck my dick. You're a piece of shit. And I think I hate you. So, yeah. Fucking. So this motherfucker. Shit, I said it again. This asshole fucking said. Was saying that, like, you know, he's talking about, like, he's breaking it down by years and by reports by different institutions of who is marrying who. And then he was saying that there was a small case that, like, before he was saying, like, you know, when deaf people marry deaf people, they have deaf kids. But then he's saying, well, look, here's this one case where these deaf people are having hearing kids because they were having deaf, they only had one deaf kid, you know. So he's noticing the way genetic deafness works through his studies. So that's what's frustrating, right? It's because what we know about genetic deafness, a lot of it came from his studies. So it's really frustrating because what will we know about my own family's genetic deafness? I mean, obviously it's easy to observe that a lot of us are deaf, but understanding it is different. So it sucks that this is how we understand this information. I wish there was a different way, but this is how it happened. You know, you can't change the history. But I'm gonna bitch about it. Fuck this dude. All right. So we're going to move on. An examination of the tables in the appendix shows that all of the pupils of the American Asylum and Illinois Institution, 445 males and 371 females, are recorded to have married. And the 445 families formed by the males there were, according to the reports, 46 deaf children, or about 10 deaf children for every 100 families. And in the 371 families formed by the females, there were 36 deaf children, or about 9 in 100 families. If we add together the total number of males and females reported to have married and the total number of deaf children stated to have been born to them, we obtain the following figures: 816 individuals married and 82 deaf offspring. We cannot conclude from this that the records indicate that 82 deaf children were born to the 816 pupils. Is that a 4 or 1? I think that's 816. That could be 846. 816 pupils referred to, for many of the male pupils mentioned had undoubtedly married female deaf mutes, educated in the same institution with themselves. In such cases that the deaf's offspring were probably recorded twice, once under the name of the father and once under the name of the mother. If we desire to obtain not the actual number of deaf children recorded to have been born to the pupils, but the proportionate number, we may safely add together the children recorded to have been born to the male and female pupils. For if 816 families have 82 deaf children, the proportionate number of deaf children, 10 for every 100 families, is the mean between the results obtained from the marriages of the males and females considered separately, and is more reliable than either from being based on larger numbers and is more reliable than either from being based on larger numbers. Okay, so in all of this right now, they're basically trying to, for whatever fucking reason, do the math to figure out how many deaf people are born to deaf people or to hearing people. And they're also realizing that if they recorded deaf people having kids, but the deaf people were having kids with each other, they weren't sure if they were counting those kids twice. So now he's doing all of this math to justify the numbers and the shit he's putting into the study and blah, 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 blah. They're just objectifying us. We're not objects. You know what the fuck I mean? Like, I don't know. Yeah, this is bullshit. Fucking, alright. And then he says, in the following tables, this plan of addition has been adopted, and it must be remembered that the number of families noted and the number of deaf children born, as deduced from the reports of the American Asylum and Illinois Institution, must not be taken to indicate the actual number of families formed by the pupils of these institutions, nor the actual number of deaf children born to them. They simply indicate a proportion, which is expressed in the third column by a percentage. If none of the males married females recorded in the same reports, then the figures in the following tables would indicate actual as well as proportionate numbers, but this is not the case. And in this table shows the proportion of deaf offspring resulting from the marriages of deaf mutes, and then it's by married couples, whether or not one of them is deaf or both of them is deaf. Then, I said one of them is deaf, but I should be saying one of them are deaf, one of them is deaf, one of them are. I don't know if I should be saying is or are there, actually, but the captioner keeps putting stuff when I said deaf, by the way. Anywho, now it's saying deaf, but y'all know what the fuck I meant. I'm saying deaf. DEAF. Anywho. Then it shows the following tables enable us to compare the above results with those obtained from each institution considered separately. Then it shows the tables proportions of deaf offspring as deduced from reports of Illinois Institution and American Asylum. So I guess, okay, so the other one, it's the same thing as the other one we just talked about, except for the other one was total, and then this one is broken down by institution. Um, and then it goes on with the memoir to say, the percentages obtained indicate, of course, the number of deaf children for every 100 families as recorded in the reports, and the actual number of deaf children for every 100 families, which is known to be greater. The general results obtained from two institution reports are remarkably concordant. I think that says concordant. I can't fucking read this. In the case of the American asylum, however, it appears that the pupils who married hearing persons had a larger proportion of deaf children than those who married deaf mutes. Such a remarkable result requires explanation. Does it? So, Alexander Graham Bell is realizing that hearing people have more deaf kids than deaf people do. And that's because, like I was saying, like the whole sporadic deafness with genetic deafness, like, um, deafness itself is genetically deafness is all about percentages, not necessarily every person is deaf. So I think it's about 15% of the population in the United States is deaf, right? And so because there's more hearing people, there are more hearing people to have more deaf children. Because there are less deaf people, there are less deaf people to have less deaf children. So that's one thing. And because there's less deaf children having kids, we just have statistically less of a chance of having more deaf kids because of where in this, you don't know where something where something is going to happen in a statistic. But yeah, I kind of forgot where I left off, so I'm going to guess. um but I think I left off in the middle right here. Okay, so the pupils assumed to have married hearing persons are simply recorded in the report as married, but from private correspondence with the present principal, I find that in most, if not in all cases so recorded, the record is really intended to indicate marriage with a hearing person. Even in the case of the congenitally deaf pupils of the American asylum, it appears that those who married hearing persons had a larger proportion of deaf offspring than those who married deaf mutes. The following table shows that this result can be deduced not only from the tables in the appendix, but from the table quoted from above from the Dr. Turner's paper on hereditary deafness. And then it shows another table, and it shows like marriages of the deaf, and it breaks it down from the American asylum between 1868 and 1877. And it shows the number of families, number of deaf children, and percentages of deaf children per families based on if there were one deaf parent, one hearing parent, and stuff like that, or two hearing parents, two deaf parents. And then it says, I have already stated that in the majority of the cases that have fallen under my personal observation where a deaf mute was married to a hearing person, that the hearing person belonged to a family containing deaf mutes, and this is significant in the light of the results deduced above, especially when we remember that the late Dr. Harvey L. Peake found that the brothers and sisters of a deaf mute are about as liable to have deaf mute children as the deaf mute himself, supposing each to marry into families that have, or each into families that have not shown a predisposition towards deaf dumbness. If we examine the cases of pupils who are presumed to have married hearing persons in the light of this idea, separating the sporadic cases from those who have deaf-mute relations, we obtain the following results. We find from the tables in the appendix that 162 deaf mutes were married, presumably to hearing persons. Of these deaf mutes, 55 are stated to have had deaf mute relatives, and they're recorded to have had 15 deaf children, or more than 27 deaf children for every 100 families. I think that was number 55. I can't read that. On the other hand, 107 of these deaf mutes were noted as sporadic cases, and only one deaf child is recorded as the offspring of the marriages. And then it goes on to say, we have here a clear indication that a hereditary tendency towards deafness, as indicated by the possession of deaf relatives, is a most important element in determining the production of deaf offspring. The following table shows that it may even be a more important element than the mere fact of congenital deafness in one or both of the parents. So remember how before when I was telling you guys, like he's coming to these conclusions about the fact that deafness isn't about genetic deafness, how like hearing people can have deaf kids and things like that. Like these are the studies as to how he came to those conclusions and everything. So this is how he got into these ideas, and now he's kind of freaking out because he's like realizing like like how do you get rid of deaf people if hearing people can still have deaf people, even if you try to stop deaf people from having kids, so he's coming into these different ideas, and this is the research along his journey and these conclusions. So then he goes into a description of married couples about like who's what. And so I had just discussed this, but it was only 4 options in terms of one person deaf, one person not deaf. Those were in 4 options. This time he breaks it down into 15 options based on whether or not someone's hearing or deaf and whether or not the deafness is congenital. And he breaks it down to number of families, number of deaf children, the percentage of deaf children per family. So yeah. Then he says, the large proportion of deaf offspring resulting from marriages where the father was known to have deaf mute relatives, and from those where the mother was known to have deaf mute relatives, and a comparatively small proportion where either parent appeared to be free from hereditary taint, you're a taint, seems to point to the conclusion that in a large proportion of cases in which the marriages were productive of deaf offspring, both parents had deaf-mute relatives, even in the case where one parent was a hearing person. A similar process of reasoning leads to the conclusion that in a large proportion of marriages where deaf offspring resulted, both parents were probably congenitally deaf, where both were deaf-mute, and one parent congenitally deaf, where only one was a deaf-mute. It is thus highly probable that a large proportion of the deaf offspring of deaf-mute marriages had parents who were both congenitally deaf and who also both had deaf-mute relatives. Non-congenital deafness, if sporadic, seems little likely to be inherited. Another deduction we make is that more of the deaf offspring whose parents had deaf relatives will marry than of those whose parents were recorded as sporadic cases, for there are more of them, and they will have a greater tendency than the others to transmit their defect to the grandchildren. We're not a fucking defect, dipshit. I don't know what happened. Okay, it's back. Somehow, alright. I got distracted looking at my little auto captioner. I'm gonna just try to ignore that. I think it's working just fine. We're gonna find out on the replay. Okie dokie. So, he's just coming to conclusions about genetic deafness, about whether or not it can be inherited. I understand why he says he's studying us, but I don't understand why he's studying us. You know what I mean? Like, all this shit, uh, it's hard for me to say something different other than what the fuck is wrong with Alexander Graham Bell, because I really do think he has mommy issues. Like, I really think that he must have hated his own childhood because his dad was like a businessman and shit. I don't think his dad paid much attention to him because his dad was working, and I think that he didn't communicate with his mom well because his mom was deaf, and his dad was against sign language because his dad was oralist too. And so I think they isolated the mom, so he didn't have a relationship with his mom. And so I don't know any of this. That's why I'm saying I think, based on what I know of deaf relationships and deaf history and of deafness and what, and I'm talking about DEAF, not deaf. Um, but yeah, Okie dokie. So then he says these results are in close accordance with the experience of the venerable principle of the Pennsylvania institution as expressed in the following letter. Oh dear God, not another fucking letter. Um, because that other fucking thing that you fucking put in there from was stupid. All right, here we go. Alexander Graham Bell, Esquire, from the Pennsylvania Institution for the Deaf and Dumb, Philadelphia, November 14th, 18. Is that 83? All right, dear sir, continued ill health has let's see here. Dear sir, continued ill health has prevented an earlier compliance with your request of October 15th. The list I now send is full and accurate according to the records of the institution and my recollection. In regard to most of the cases I know of, no place where fuller information can be obtained than our books furnish. A residence of more than 40 years in this institution has afforded me abundant opportunity for observation in regard to the subject of your research. A statement of the conclusions I have arrived at may be of some interest and use to you. In regard to the marriage of the deaf mutes with each other, if both the man and the woman are deaf from birth, there is very great danger, I should say a strong probability, that some of the offspring will be born deaf. I know a family, however, where the mother is one of these congenitally deaf children, and the father one of 5. And the 7 children they have had are all without defect. And the list sent you, I'm having a hard time reading this, my bad. And the list sent you all the parents, except in 2 cases, were born deaf. In one of these 2 cases, the father could hear, and the mother is a semi-mute. Where both parents became deaf, I don't know this word, I think it's adventitiously? Not, no, adventitiously? There seems to be no more probability of the offspring being born deaf than there is where both parents hear. Where only one of the parents is congenitally deaf, the children almost always hear. Any further information I can give will be furnished willingly. Yours respectfully, Joshua Foster. So that was the letter. So notice here, you know what I mean? Um, has afforded me, notice his wording here, has afforded me abundant opportunity for observation in regard to the subject of your research. I feel like he's kissing ass there. I feel like that's a way of saying, oh, I've been on top of your shit. You know what I mean? Like, he's, like, I don't fucking get it. And then fucking he says, read this part, like, if we pay attention to this part again, he literally says, I apologize. I got distracted with my little auto captioner up on here. Um, Just making sure that you can see it. Okay. I apologize. Hopefully that's been seen the whole time, but moving on. Alright, so this motherfucker, shit, I said it again. I think it's like the third or fourth fucking time I said a damn word. I don't even want to fucking say it. But, my phone died. Fucking, um, so yeah, I really think this dude's kissing his ass. He's over here talking about, oh, I've been looking at your research for all this time. I think that was an ass kissy statement. Um, and then he fucking says, fucking, there's very great danger. I should say a strong probability that some of the offspring will be born deaf. There is very, he's saying if two people who are genetically deaf from birth have kids, there's a great danger, a strong probability that some of the offspring will be born deaf. What the fuck? Where is the danger? Where is the danger? What the hell? Alexander Graham Bell. What the hell? What the hell, Alexander Graham Bell? What the hell, Alexander Graham Bell is what the fuck I just said. Anywho, okay, keep going. I'm gonna try and end this soon. But my attempts to deduce from the records of the marriages of the deaf and the influences that cause the production of deaf offspring have been met with only partial success. Viable indications have been obtained, but precise and accurate results are unattainable on account of imperfect data. It occurred to me some time ago that a different method might lead to an exhaustive examination of the subject. It is known that few of the deaf and dumb married before the establishment of educational institutions in this country, and nearly 78% of all the marriages recorded in the reports of the American Asylum, the oldest institution in the country, seem to have been contracted since the year 1843. The probabilities are, therefore, that the vast majority of the deaf offspring born are still living, and from them may be obtained an accurate account of their ancestry. If anybody asks you about your ancestry, you forgot, you don't know, don't tell them shit. Dude, what if this is what they've been doing with family trees all along? Anywho, it is also appeared probable that the majority of these deaf mutes would, at some period of their lives, make their appearance in institutions for the deaf and dumb, and from the institution records might be obtained their names and addresses. Such considerations, hold on, this captioner thingy, okay. I think it's because I have it set up weird, but the captioner isn't showing up everything that I'm saying. So I'm gonna see if I can troubleshoot that for next time. Or if the cause I wasn't sure if the auto captioner would work. So if the auto captioner works, I might not even try this next time or going forward, but we'll see. This is my very first live. So I apologize. If it's a little bumpy, we're gonna get there. But I feel like, there's still value in here. All right, we're going to keep going. So, such considerations as the above led me to send all the institutions in the country a circular letter of inquiry requesting the names and addresses of all the pupils who had been admitted who had deaf-mute parents, and returns have been received from a number of institutions. It's crazy what they do with your information when you go to fucking school. And they make you go to school, so it's not like the parents could have opted out of this shit. Like, they would probably been arrested or some shit. Alright. A starting point has thus been gained for a newer investigation of the subject. The cases returned are sufficient in number to throw some light upon the proportion of deaf offspring born to deaf mutes as compared with the proportion born to the community at large. The total number of deaf mutes in the country, according to the recent census, is 33,878, which gives us a proportion of one deaf mute for every 1,500 of the population. If, then, the proportion of deaf mutes originating among the deaf mutes themselves were no greater than in the community at large, they should constitute only 1 in 1,500 of the deaf mute population. In other words, we should not have more than 23 deaf mutes in the United States who are themselves the children of deaf mutes. The returns received from the institutions, however, show that no less than 215 such children have already been admitted as pupils into 35 of the 58 institutions of the country. 23 institutions not replying to my queries. I wouldn't respond to you either, you piece of shit. Pupils are rarely admitted before they are 10 or 12 years of age, and many do not reach the institution until they are much older. Hence, it is evident that this number does not at all express the total number of such cases in the United States. Even if we suppose that no more than 230 such cases are to be found in the country, the proportion is 10 times greater than in the community at large, or 1 in 150. But when we consider that nearly all of these children were born deaf, whereas nearly half of the deaf mutes of the country, 44.9%, became deaf from accidental causes, we realize that the liability to the production of congenital deaf mutes is nearly 20 times that of the population at large than 10 times. It is evident that whatever may be the actual number of deaf mutes in the country who have one or both parents deaf, the true number is much greater than the assumed above, from which it follows that the liability to the production of deaf offspring is also greater. While then we cannot at present arrive at any percentage, it is certain that the proportion of deaf-mute offspring born to the deaf mutes is many times greater than the proportion born to the people at large. I literally just said all this shit like probably an hour ago, and I'm like, God damn, have I really been spending 1 hour explaining that one fucking thing I said earlier about how it's probably been 30 minutes. I have no idea how long it's been. But when I was talking about how because of population sizes and deaf people make up about 15% of the population, so obviously because there's more hearing people than deaf people, more hearing people are going to have more deaf kids than deaf people can have kids. You know what the fuck I mean? Like, that's just a simple fact based on population. Like, what the hell? So yeah, okay, that was the end of chapter 3. We did it. We fucking did it. We did chapter 3. So we did 32 out of 97 of these pages. So we got through 1/3 of this document so far. I'm so excited. So we got through half of what it's broken down into, a little over half actually. And so my goal for the next live is going to be chapters 4 through 6, the conclusion, and the appendix. So we did the introduction, chapters 1, 2, and 3 today. So that's 4 sections. I'm going to try and see if I can just like buckle down and, grin and bear it and power through the next section. But, yeah. So all of this, let's recap what we've discussed so far. So yeah, I'm going to recap what I've discussed so far, and then we're going to end the live. I'm going to recap what I discussed. I have a little outro I'm going to play, and then we will pick this back up again. I'm going to do another live this weekend. I'll schedule that. I haven't decided which day. So we're going to pick that back up again and finish this bitch. So, yeah. So, chapter 3 is called, bro, this shit is so ridiculous, can't remember it. So this one is called Deaf Mute Offspring of Deaf Mute Marriages. So in chapter 3, what we've done here is completely break down the different stats and the different information of what they know at this time about how deafness is passed on genetically, about how many deaf people are having children, and about how many children have which type of deaf parents. And they really broke that down into this one. Okay. And all of this is going to connect. So all of this, the reason we're breaking down all of this, so when I talk about, this is the genocide happening against deaf people, you understand the ideology, the rhetoric, the academia behind all of that. So we went over that. So today, everything that we discussed today, the entire memoir is called Upon the Formation of a Deaf Variety of the Human Race, and it was a paper presented to the National Academy of Sciences at New Haven in November 12th, 1883. This was written, published, as well as promoted and shared and spoken on by Alexander Graham Bell. And the beginning and the introductory remarks, he is all about comparing us to breeding us like animals. And he's talking about the variation of human selection and about trying to breed humans based on desired characteristics. And he also says in the introduction that the laws of heredity that are known to hold in the case of animals also apply to men. The intermarriage of congenital deaf mutes through a number of successive generations should result in the formation of a deaf variety of the human race. What the hell, Alexander Graham Bell? Like, what the hell, man? Fucking, yeah, so that's his intro. Like, really, that's how you start this damn thing. And then he says, um, there are good grounds for the belief that a thorough investigation of the marriages or of the deaf and influence of these marriages upon the offspring will afford a solution of the problem to what extent of the human race susceptible of variation by selection. So, these are all very alarming things. So then in chapter 1, he goes on to say, upon the materials for the formation of a deaf variety of the human race at present existing in America. So, he is basically saying, look, man, deaf people, they've been living, they're still gonna live, they keep living, like what? And then he literally calls it a calamity. Let's see if I can see that line. But he starts listing our families, and he's basically saying that we're peculiarities, calling us a defect, all of these things. And he's basically saying we're a great calamity to the world. And that was chapter 1. And then chapter 2 is all about marriages of the deaf. And in chapter 2, he's basically talking about how, he goes into talking about the deaf institutions, and he's like recording how many deaf people got married and whether or not they married a hearing person or a deaf person. And in here, he was basically saying that it should be urged upon deaf people the impropriety of intermarriage is what he was promoting. So urging upon deaf people to be ashamed of marrying each other, basically, those types of things is what he was saying. But yeah, And then in chapter 3, deaf mute offspring of deaf mute marriages. In chapter 3, the whole fucking thing here is he's breaking it down to whether or not deaf kids have hearing parents or deaf parents, and whether or not, if they have deaf parents, whether or not the deaf parents have congenital deafness or if they were deaf later in life, and breaking it down into all of these things. Because he's trying to understand how deafness spreads in families for the reasons stated in his introduction um, of of impacting the way that the human race expresses our genes, is basically what he was saying. So that's chapters 1 through 3. So you can see like how Dr. Alexander, he wasn't a doctor, I don't know why I call him a doctor, but you can see how Alexander Graham Bell was known for being a eugenicist, and this is why I say he's a eugenicist. And he won an award for a eugenics conference. Like, he was really big and proud to be part of the eugenics movement. And so this is his paper on that. He's a big spearheader of it. Next time we're going to be starting off with chapter 4. I want to thank everybody that came today. It really means a lot to me that you guys are able to show up.